So let's go to the Big Ten. You have Penn State as your number one, and you're way too early. So you have Penn State winning the Big Ten, but obviously they've lost the game because they're not the number one seed. Who do we think Penn State loses to in the regular season? I think I have a good guess.
Yeah, they got a pretty big road game on November 1st. They probably might not win.
That would be Ohio State.
And like this is the math here. I felt like I feel like if I put Penn State as 5 or 6 in the seeding instead of 2, then I would look like an idiot / hypocrite for putting them number 1 in my poll.
Well, you definitely look like a hypocrite.
Like I didn't want, so like that's the thing that I struggle with, and I want your opinion on this. So like when you rank your top 25, can you think a team is number 1 in May without thinking they're going to win the national title?
Yes.
Because
especially in this playoff format.
And I did that in this seeding because I had Texas 2 in my poll and Penn State number 1. And I didn't have Penn State winning the national title. So I think like on paper right now that Penn State probably has the best all-around team on paper. But whether or not I think that's going to mean they win a national title, I think this is a different exercise.
Yeah, can you win 3 in a row against that level of quality competition? Is different than, do I think you're the best overall team? Because some of it's stylistic.
Yeah. And like also too, it's like, but if you put somebody number 1, that means you think they're the best team. So it's a very hard thing to do. But here's the thing I'll say.
But also there's just randomness in a situation where there's where a really good team has to play 3 other really good teams in a row.
Right. So Penn State, I'm a human being too, guys. Like I've watched James Franklin lose games all the time to top. Like I'm not like I'm immune to seeing what you see. So like last year I thought was they had a step stool to the semifinal, but I thought last year was a reasonably good positive step in the right direction for Penn State. Is that a fair thing? Like I know a lot of people go, well, they didn't play anybody, so it doesn't count. It's like I think that being a possession away from the national title game counts. Whether how they got there, that's the seeding. But I thought that they had a good step forward, and I thought that they, lost a transcendent tight end, but got marginally, if not significantly better at multiple position, including their biggest weakness. So I think they'll be very good on defense. I think they traditionally play Ohio State tough. They did last year. It was a 1-possession game for 90% of the game. I think they have a chance to split the series with them. But if you ask me, are you certain they'd beat Ohio State in Indianapolis? No, come on. No, I'm not certain of that. Okay. So then Ohio State I have as 5, and I think that you could make the same exact case of whether or not they beat Texas in the first game of the season. They could end up at 5 either way. So like you can decide however this works the best who won that game. But I think if they play a 3-point game, it will be a nice boost for the team that won, but I also think it will be a quasi boost for the team that lost in the end. And Ohio State will be, if they're 11-2 with a loss in the Big Ten championship game to a team they already beat, I think 5 is where they would land. And then they would be the beneficiary this year of the Penn State easy path to the to the quarterfinals. Or easy path to the semis, I should say. Sorry, first 2 rounds.
Is it bad that I'm secretly hoping the commissioners just come out and say we're going to seed it straight before I do this so it can look completely different?
I think that you should do what you like in this category, and then I'll let you go first when they change it.
Right, so we'll just do it again. We'll just run it back.
But
okay.
So here's the thing, though, that is interesting, and it dawned on me again. But if you look at Ohio State's path and you look at Penn State's path, Penn State in winning the Big Ten actually does the reverse to what it did last year, which is gives itself a harder playoff path because it won the conference. So like it's like if Ohio State and Penn State play in the Big Ten in the same type of scenario,
so
that Oregon played it, but like they bit themselves this year after they get in this scenario, like Ohio State would probably want to lose that game because then they would get Boise.
Right. And this is what you have. You have essentially Penn State losing to Ohio State in the regular season and then beating them in the Big Ten championship game, which would make all of this make sense. Who's Ohio State losing to other than Penn State in the title game? There's one other loss on Ohio State's schedule. So what is it?
It doesn't have to be.
It could be Texas.
I mean, but there doesn't have to be. They could be undefeated.
Yeah, there does.
Game in B5.
There does. If Ohio State beats Penn State in the regular season and only loses to Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, I think it would be 5. I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't be one of the top 4 seeds because of the.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Trust me, I thought that through. I'm like, no, I'm not going to have them losing to Purdue on there. Like, it's like.
No, I'm glad you corrected me on that because I think there's probably some people out there that were thinking the same thing. Like, you can't.
Even
if Ohio State's got to lose another game.
Lose that game, they're still 5.
Yeah. So you are predicting an Ohio State win at Michigan because the chat is.
I am.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Listen, guys. Like, I know that Michigan fans are having a good time, and buddy, revel in it because that's what this sport's about. I don't think you're going to beat him 13 years in a row. Like, I actually have a theory about Ryan Day. Do you want to hear it now, or should I save it for the season?
You can go ahead.
I think now that they won the national title and the monkey's off his back a little bit, I think that he might not be as tight as he's been in that game. I think that now that he's been able to have the summer tour on the Oprah Winfrey show, and like people had, he was on like Jimmy Fallon and stuff, and like people have been celebrating him and they hoisted the trophy. I know that the Michigan game was a thorn in his side last year. I think that his pressure as a coach has been mitigated to a point where maybe he can just be himself more than the tight, wound up person that he is at the end of the year, and then that will change the dynamic of it. But I don't know. You
mean they might go to Ann Arbor and just throw to Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah, they might just like throw the ball to the best player in college football this year. I don't know.
Okay.
That last year, and I will say this, and I'm sure Michigan fans will probably agree, was the single most bizarre result I think I've ever seen in the sport. In terms of like who the teams were, how the game played out, and how one coach allowed that to happen.
Yep. So let's go to Oregon. That is your last Big Ten team in this bracket, by the way. No Illinois. Or no, you've got Illinois. I'm sorry. You've got Illinois as well. You have 4 Big Ten teams. Yes. That's right. Sorry. So let's move to Oregon.
Ohio State can beat teams not named Michigan does not actually mean they can beat Michigan. That's true. That's true. But like also Michigan lost the game like 20 out of 21 years and now owns the rivalry.
I
gotta find like this thing of like what's true now isn't true forever, because like that's
right. It's like the Michigan fans forgot that we were alive for the first 20 years of this century as well.
5 years ago, I wrote a story about how the rivalry wasn't fun anymore because Michigan wasn't even a competitive party in it. So like that wasn't that long ago, guys, and it's not like Ohio State stinks now. So like the thought that Ohio State will go on the road and beat a team that might be 9-3 or 8-4 next year is found asinine is crazy to me. But okay, go ahead, continue.
All right, let's talk Oregon, because this is a team that was the number 1 seed this year, undefeated regular season, won the Big Ten in its first year in the Big Ten, did lose a lot, brought a lot in. Dylan Thieneman from Purdue in the transfer portal, who I think will be a very impactful transfer. Isaiah World from Nevada at offensive tackle, probably going to be a very impactful transfer. Dante Moore takes over as a starting quarterback. So there's a lot. There's a lot here. The schedule is definitely manageable. They do go to Penn State. They have Indiana. They go to Iowa. And then you've got SC and Washington to close.
Yeah. And if we can throw the bracket back up, I just want to make it's easy for me to visualize it. It's hard. Okay.
Yeah.
So like 9 seed to me is a 2-loss team.
Yeah. That's what's where are the losses? So we know one's to Penn State because we said Penn State only lost once, and that was in Columbus. So where is the other loss here?
You know where
at Iowa?
Do you know where I put it in my brain when I was doing it? And I figured they might lose to somebody else. The road game at Iowa could be interesting, but I had them losing to Washington on the road because Washington was so good at home last year, and Damon Williams is badass.
I think that's fair. I think that. Yeah. I'm looking at this though, Ari, and now Indiana is a tricky one too. But they've got to come to Eugene. But I don't know. I might see 11-1. I might see Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. It's very this is one of those as I do mine now having it's unfair to you because now I've gotten to pick yours apart.
Yeah, you're able to like see it, visualize it in a different way. Yeah, but no, I struggle with this because like here's where my issue was that you're not going to face my issue was that I had Penn State #1 in my preseason poll. And like, if you think that Oregon is, because if you think Oregon's going to go 11-1 this year, then that means that Ohio State, who beat Penn State in my bracket, would play Oregon in the Big Ten.
Right, you knocked Penn State out of the Big Ten championship.
I didn't want to do that.
Actually, well, no, we have to figure out the tiebreakers on that because they would have 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, that's the reason why Penn State's 2 for me. Like, I wanted to stay strong in the point of like, hey, I think Penn State's going to be really, really good. What I do think would be interesting though is that if Oregon ran the table and didn't lose a second game, there would be a tiebreaker there, because one of their losses is at Penn State. But like, yes, this was tricky for me. But like, also too, all 3 teams will be very good. And like,
I love that the game it set up. I love the Oregon at Georgia first round game, like, because it is
bracket came out great, by the way, in terms of like intrigue,
storylines. Yeah. We always joke about the NCAA basketball tournament selection committee, seeding based on storylines, which, by the way, they don't do. If you've ever done the mock selection, like, you're not even thinking about who's playing who. But this game would be great just because of the way it bookends Dan Lanning's first game at Oregon. Dan Lanning's first game in Oregon was against Georgia in Atlanta, and it was this is how far you have to go. And it would be great to see, because I think, obviously, I don't think it would be a blowout win for Georgia in this case. I think it would be a really fun game. So you actually have Oregon winning this game and advancing.
Yeah. And I thought that was a salute to Dan Lanning. Well, also them taking the brunt of the seeding bus again for the second straight year. So like, yeah. I think that Oregon might have one of the best running backs in college football. I think we need to watch out for Mekhi Hughes. Obviously picked up an important transfer at the offensive line. Yeah, you already listed these. But one of the best safeties. Dante Moore's got a lot on his shoulders, but I think Oregon's going to be a very good football team this year.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And now, okay, let's get to Illinois, because people don't like Illinois being in here. I get it.
Scared as hell on this one.
Well, they might not make it, Ari. Like, they're our trendy pick, but they just might not make it.
It just might not happen for them. And I feel like it. I feel like too many people think they're good.
I think Illinois they probably are good, though.
Illinois could conceivably be 10-2 and be. This is where I had a hard time with the math, but conceivably could be 10-2. They're not going to beat Ohio State, although they do get it at home. They're not going to win that game, I don't think. So I thought that if they were to win the rest of their games, which I think that Illinois might be favored in all of them, if not most of them, if they have Duke, USC, and Wisconsin wins, and Indiana win, and that's
at Indiana's. I think the at Indiana is going to tell us where we should be putting our trendy Bucks. But in the Big Ten.
I wanted to put a 4th Big Ten team in there, and it could have been Michigan, and it could have been Indiana. I think we're going to know where we stand on September 20th. I actually think that might be a game worth going to, honestly, because that's just a fascinating big-time game and a big-time conference between two teams that don't typically play in those games in September.
Well, and it's we talk about how the playoff renders September games less meaningful, but this feels like a kind of a turning point for one of these.
Because it does feel like one of those games. It almost feels like you're playing for the 4th Big Ten slot in that game.
But I want to talk about
Michigan.
Really good, yeah. Can we talk about Michigan? Because the chat, and obviously we have a lot of Michigan fans in the chat, so I understand that. But they've basically said, why are you leaving Michigan out of this? And as someone who has said, if they have a functional offense, I believe they're going to be a really good competitive team in the Big Ten. I think it's worth going through Michigan's schedule at least to talk about this, because they don't play Illinois, so we're not going to see them head to head. But
here's the thing that tipped the scales for me with Michigan. And I don't know if I'm the only one, but I don't think they're going to beat Oklahoma. So if they don't beat Oklahoma, they start off the season on the wrong foot. And in order for them to get, and I already penciled in a loss with my bracket to Ohio State at home. So that means they've got to be undefeated for the rest of the Big Ten schedule. And they're on the road at Nebraska. They're on the road at USC. They have a pretty tough schedule, and they're not proven yet. So I thought that this looked like more of a 9-3 team than I did a 10-2 or an 11-1 team.
Now, here's also the interesting thing about this. Hypothetically, let's say they lose to Oklahoma, but then they do go on that run. They win 9 in a row.
Sure, that doesn't matter at the time.
And, but listen. This is where it would get really interesting. And then they lose to Ohio State. It probably puts them in a tiebreaker scenario to be in the Big Ten championship game. And maybe they're in it depending on how the tiebreakers shake out.
Yes, if they don't lose another game, sure. Yes.
And then they're in the playoff.
Yes. No, they absolutely could do it. And like, listen, I don't know what do you think is actually more likely here? Illinois making the playoff or Michigan making the playoff? Because
that's what I'm wrestling with. I still think it's Illinois because I just don't know what Michigan's offense is going to look like.
You have to
Illinois, I know is good on both sides of the ball.
You have to suspend your belief of like smaller program type players, or smaller program actually going out and doing it is harder to believe than Michigan figuring it out. Even though Illinois has really good football players and returns a team that won 10 games, it's still really, really hard to visualize, especially because Illinois got to those 10 wins in a not so easy path that like they're just going to blow through the Big Ten. So like if you think Michigan's going to be there, then that's not something that I would get fired up about in terms of saying that you're wrong. I'm just explaining to you why and my thought process was when I didn't put them in.
Yeah, I'm with it. I think Illinois.
Also mentioned too that like I did this after they suspended Sharon Moore for the road game to Nebraska. Like so, like that's
right.
Like that's a little wrinkle in there too. Like they have to be like Michigan has to be fully back for them to make the playoff with this schedule, and I think Oklahoma's going to be good. So
Illinois, Michigan, Iowa all feel like if things shake out a certain way, they could be in there in this spot we're talking about.
Yeah, and like as we said at the top of the show, the difference between Team 3 and Team 2 in these conferences and Team 2 and Team 5 is not as big as it used to be.
Well, and that's what it makes me think about the Tony Petitti idea for the play-in games. Like I kind of want to see those in the Big Ten, like 6 versus 3 and 4 versus 5, because I think 6 and 3 might not be very different.
So this just is kind of a reinforcement too that I think I like Illinois' season team total over. I don't know that I love the 8.5 Michigan thing. Is like that's staring you right in the face of like, hey guys, this is probably going to be like a 9-3 or an 8-4 team, and I think that's probably where they're going to be this year.
Yeah, the Illinois one, the over under was easy. Like you made the best point. If a disappointing season cashes the over, which in the case of Illinois, if they go 8-4, it'll be considered a disappointing season. You take the over, but that doesn't mean they're going to make the playoff. But I'm fine with this, and I'm going to wrestle with Illinois in my bracket as well.